Good day. I'm Steve Hunegs, and I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and the Dakotas. Today is Yom HaShoah. We recall the martyr of our people who were murdered during the Shoah and all those who suffered and died during the Holocaust. We also remember the 75th anniversary of VE Day approaching, the remarkable effort required to defeat Nazi Germany. Keeping in mind, but for the defeat of the Nazi Germany, that's what it was that ultimately ended the Holocaust. The war effort was staggering. Think about the combined Allied efforts of the Soviet Union, France, Great Britain, the partisans, all who fought on the side of the Allies. United States, 16 million men and women under arms. Almost one half of the world's industrial output occurred in the United States during the Second World War. That's men and women, 30% of whom were men. It's African Americans, that's whites, that were people of all ethnicities and religions, combining their efforts, not without discrimination, mind you, in the defeat of the Axis powers. Think about Minnesota for a second. 326,000 Minnesotans serving in the armed forces, some 8,000 killed in action. Of course, amongst those were liberators, people who participated in the liberation of the camps. I'll hold up pictures of some of people I had the privilege to meet who were liberators. Meryl Bergstahler from Minnesota, Bob Bain from North Dakota. Two of the most wonderful people you'll ever meet in life, who were part of people drawn from all walks of life who participated in the liberation of the concentration camps. War stories, of course. Speaking of the 326,000 Minnesotans who served in the war, Al Zidane has done such a wonderful job of chronicling these stories, including putting our beloved Leon Frankel on the cover of one of his 3 volumes, 2 of which I'm holding here. But keep this in mind when we think about all the Minnesotans who served in the war and the Minnesotans who participated in the liberation of the camps. JCRC, our book on witnesses to the Holocaust, includes many stories of survivors, our precious survivors who came to live in Minnesota, whose stories are recounted in the book, but also in the book are stories of Minnesota liberators, including 2 people from whom you'll hear later. Joel Glotter, graduate of Minneapolis West High School, member of our Jewish community, who participated in the liberation of the Ohrdruf concentration camp. Mark will be joined in video by his son, Mark Glotter. You'll have an opportunity to hear from him and see Joel and understand a little bit about his remarkable story. And I mentioned before, Bob Bain from Fargo, North Dakota. Should be noted that the father of the current lieutenant governor of South Dakota, Larry Roden, his father was also a liberator of a concentration camp. The war record of American Jews was exemplary. Even before the war began, the American Jewish Welfare Society was keeping track of the participation of American Jews in the war to refute the canard that American Jews somehow were not patriotically enough or sufficiently involved in the war effort in the military circles. 550,000 American Jews served in the Second World War. These 2 volumes list all American Jews who were wounded or killed in action or decorated in action amongst more than 1 million Jews worldwide who served in the Allied armed forces. More than 52,000 American Jews were decorated for their service during the Second World War. Keep in mind, if you look at the Minnesota volume or the Minnesota entry for American Jews in World War II, if you just look at the names Cohn, you get a sense of the sacrifice of Minnesota Jews along with fellow Minnesotans in the war. Killed in action were Sergeant Aaron Cohn from Virginia, Minnesota, Sergeant Hyman Cohn from Duluth, Minnesota, Private First Class Emmanuel Cohn from Crookston, Minnesota, and a gentleman who would have been my cousin had he lived, Gerald Sonny Cohn from Minneapolis. And here is Gerald's grave, his Star of David, United States Military Cemetery in Lorain. And at this point, we remember all of our American heroes, militaries, past, present, and future, who do so much to protect our people and do so much to protect democracy in the United States here and abroad. We're very proud of our relationship with the Minnesota National Guard, with Adjutant General John Jensen, before him Adjutant General Rick Nash. Very proud that we may have the only National Guard in the country that has its own special emphasis council for Holocaust remembrance. Indeed, if you have tuned in, you may have seen Major Nathan Byrne and CW3 Jeremy Myers reading names as they do each year as part of the Yom HaShoah commemoration. Keep in mind too that not all the heroes were on the battlefield. Herman Stern from Fargo, North Dakota, who organized efforts to save almost 150 German and Austrian Jews, fighting tooth and nail the bureaucracy and anti-Semitism in the State Department, based on significantly his own indefatigable efforts to rescue people before the Shoah and after the Kristallnacht. So we remember the Herman Sterns of the world too. So I thank you for tuning in tonight, today, at some point to commemorate Yom HaShoah, to join the community, join the virtual Jewish community throughout the world, to celebrate, to remember, to commemorate all those who died, remembering their lives, their struggles, their beauties, the families they raised when they came to Minnesota and the United States and all places of freedom throughout the world, and in Israel too, which does so much to combat anti-Semitism and protect the Jewish people globally. I wish you a good evening. I wish that all of us, with great thanks to all the frontline medical personnel, will find good health and security and safety in the days and weeks to come. And let us remember all those who gave so much for our country in the Second World War, including the liberators of the concentration camps and death camps. And I also say that a special note to the many Jews from the former Soviet Union who came to Minnesota. We began a project of tape recording the memories of Soviet Jewish World War II veterans, starting with a gentleman named Samuel Maslin, who was a member of the Soviet Air Force in the Second World War. So the global circle of veterans, the global circle of people of all nations who came together to defeat the Axis. We remember them on this day, Yom HaShoah, as we think about and pray for the memories of our precious who were lost in the Shoah. Thank you very much and have a good evening.